touch my phone, make sure.
Oh, good. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's the Village of Holly Zoning Board of Appeals for November 1st, 2021 at 7 p.m. Call the roll, please.
Let's do Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do roll call.
Oh, I just backwards.
You're calling the order.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we can go to roll call, please.
Pachota.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Delaney.
Here.
Hutchins.
Here.
Campbell.
Here.
McGaw.
Here.
Rebar.
Here.
Okay. Let's move on to approval of the minutes for October 4th, 2021. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? And I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as approved or changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? And if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or changed.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna move on to a public comment. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. With the approval of the commission, speakers may be given up to 5 minutes extension. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to public comment?
Is this according to the agenda or something not on the agenda?
It isn't stated. Just state your name and address, please.
Jim Clark, 314 Hadley Street. I've lived in Holly about 35 years. During that time, I've almost continuously been on the village council, the ZBA, the planning commission, and I've been actively involved. Almost all the time I've lived in Holly, I also held a residential builder's license and a real estate broker's license. So I'm fairly familiar with how things work and how things are built. What you have before you, I think, is clearly, in my mind, a self-created problem. We have lots of horses and opportunities to ride those animals around here out at Holden Flakes and Holly Township, down at Rose Oaks. There are lots of accommodations for horses. And virtually any house in the surrounding townships, assuming they're built on a minimum of 2.5 acres, would probably qualify to keep large animals. Here we have a situation where a house was purchased in the village for horses, which is now legal, and I've got no problem with that. However, here we have a series of requests for variances to build a fence in the front yard, to build a barn in the front. I drove by the property today, and I think it's fair to say, today, most of it is flooded. I don't know that that's a healthy place for horses, but certainly when you have all these other options and land surrounding the village, to come into the village and try to force the issue here and ask, our ordinances have been changed, that's fine, but, here, a whole series of variances are being requested. And I believe It is self-created, and I believe you should deny the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments for public speaking? Yes.
My name is Sherilyn Everly. I am from 314 Hadley Street. And when I first heard about this at a council meeting, I said that I thought horses in the village was a bad idea, that it would just be a cascade of issues. However, I didn't think that there were very many two-acre plots that were dry enough to accommodate horses. And I had confidence in our zoning board that you guys would come up with a zoning ordinance that would protect both the landowners that are already here and try to accommodate horses and try to do it in a way that was safe to the animals and to people around. And I think you did a good job with that. And now to have the very first time that it gets tested to say, oh, except for la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da, well, that just kind of flies in the face of all the work that you guys just did to protect us. And I say protect because I do believe that zoning ordinances are something that people should be able to look at and say, when I'm coming to this community, this is what my reasonable expectation is. Now, I'm not silly enough to believe that things don't change, because they do, like chickens. And they came with roosters. And I know there's no roosters, but again, that cascade of things that people just didn't expect when you try to be welcoming. So, I have to say I have not talked to anybody in my group of friends that thought this was a good idea from the beginning. We kind of all are looking at you to protect our interests as well as try to find the even Steven here, but I'm with Jim, and I would not grant these people any variance from this ordinance that you worked so hard to create.
Thank you. Any other people for public speaking?
Sarah, 415 LeGrand. The fence that was originally on the property was a 1938 chain link fence. It's overgrown. It's 55 inches in some sections, 47 in other, and 40 that was put up on the property when purchased. So for the fence variance, it's only going to increase the property value around because it will be a 4-board straight fence, not a janky, rusted over fence that has vines growing through it and looks terrible. So the fence variance, I don't think that's a real, at least coming from my perspective, I feel like it's going to enhance the property around, and as well as my direct neighbors around that have spoken that they would love a new fence put in, as well as my neighbor Dorothy Spring, who is right up to my lot. So that's what I have to say about my fence.
Thank you. Any other people want to have public speaking? Seeing none, let's move on to the public hearing. At this time, I would entertain a motion to go into the public hearing for case number 2021-006, application for a variance from Sarah Roche, 415 LeGrand. The request is for a variance to allow a 55-inch fence for the front yard, accessory structure in the front yard, area less than 50 feet from the property line for keeping horses.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have to have a roll call on that.
Not necessary.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Has the village received any input on this from any of the property owners?
We have not received any letters or phone calls.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Caitlin Haven. I am your planning consultant from Road Professional Services Company. So I'd like to go over this specific case that's in front of you tonight. To go over some of the material that was included in the packet. So one of the maps that we included that I'll reference in our review is the amount of wetland that's located on the property. You can see in the map over there. This is the utilization of 3 separate parcels. It's my understanding that they're not proposing to merge them all into one. And that's why some of the various nuances are associated with the proposed request. Essentially where you see the brown portion of the back portion of the property, that is essentially where the regulated wetland is. That you can't build in a wetland, but it requires more permits and things of that nature to be able to do so. a portion of the back, but not all of the back. And that was, I think, one of the big reference material. And so the variances we're going over tonight, there are quite a few, but they're somewhat intertwined in some ways. So I'll go through each of those. I consolidated it all into one checklist. Hopefully it's not too confusing. If not, I won't do it again, if you do. So the first one is talking about making sure that we're watching the height of fences in the front yard. So we've had a case like this before. Essentially the idea is that you have a 36-inch fence that's an ornamental fence in which you can see through. It adds to the open space of the area. They're asking to have a higher fence than that. The second request is regarding the accessory structure that's proposed on the property. So it's proposed to be in the front yard, and then on a separate parcel itself. And so with those components, the intent is again, from an aesthetic standpoint, you don't want those accessory buildings in front of the principal structure. And so it's trying to regulate where the placement of those different structures are on a property. And then lastly, talking about the yard area, less than 50 feet from the property line for the keeping of horses. And that's related to watching for nuisances and things of that nature. You want, just like other uses, you try to keep certain things from the property line to minimize any potential nuisances and things of that nature. So looking at the first page of our review, some of the different facts to keep in mind. So we do not have an agricultural zoning district. So this would be considered an R1B single family zoning district classification. So we're not arguing the use of horses being on the property. It is the facilities in which makes it easier for them to house it how they would like to house it, just to clarify. So the plot plan that's associated with it provides the additional fencing that's proposed and the structure on the two lots. The proposed fence would be installed for the purposes of keeping the horses in the designated areas. The applicant is requesting the variance in order to have those different stalls and fencing to keep the horses. The total site is about 4.86 acres, and approximately 50% of the large one in the rear, as I mentioned, has an issue associated with being a regulated wetland. So our first standard talks about practical difficulties. And so what we're looking for is a strict letter of reading of the rules, setbacks, area coverage, density, dimensional features, in which we're making sure that we want to, our rules are determined to be unnecessarily burdensome, and that this variance would, by not granting it, would cause a major inconvenience. So in support, there is different wetland features associated with the rear of the property, which limits the availability of using the front yard, and then the limited usable space for the required fencing for that front yard. So because of that feature, it can cause some potential issues. In opposition, the property is being utilized for residential purposes. The addition of the use, including horses, is something that is a practical difficulty related to the where they're proposing to have that specific portion of the use, the fencing and the building. The applicant is choosing to not combine the lots, which is causing the elimination of at least one of those different variances. The applicant, in their application, they did provide some extensive material. Most level parts of the property are on the upper parts of lots C and D, which are placed, is their accessory building proposed location in the 30-foot front yard from the road, making a 50-foot off of LeGrand Road, in the 100 to 200 yards of dirt fill that would cause significant drainage problems from the overall lot. The general slope of the property and drainage for the wetland to keep the property higher and make sure that it maintains some level of dryness associated with it as well. Number 2 talks about substantial justice, in which we are, the requested variance would provide justice to the applicant as well as other surrounding property owners in the district, so our single family district, and that a lesser variance would not provide enough relief, that we're trying to be consistent with all of those other variances we've posed in the past regarding property, those property owners in that surrounding area. So in support, other than a neighboring home to the north, the property is secluded and the variance would not significantly impact the property owner. In opposition, there are no similar uses present in the surrounding properties and no similar structures or other variances that we're aware of regarding, again, the setback, the fencing, as well as the accessory building location. The applicant did provide in support of their request. The proposed area will be a horse pasture. The horse pasture has good drainage, or the soil then would become muddy, which would then have rain and wet. Leaving all the mud and the dampness would obviously hurt the health of the horses. By the proposed building and the placement of the 30-foot from the road, it would help continue the flow of water, and which goes into the wetlands, and which would prevent the horses from getting diseases. Next page, standard number 3 talks about public safety and welfare. So this proposed variance, with the spirit of our regulation and looking at our public safety and welfare, we want to make sure those are upheld. So in support, due to the seclusion of the nature of the area, there would be no impact with the surrounding property owners. However, in opposition, given the limited usage of acreage on the site, housing horses on the site may create nuisances associated with properties in the surrounding area. Number 4 is talking about extraordinary circumstances. So is there a specific circumstance or condition specific to the property and which cannot be generally applied to other properties in the same zoning district? This condition shall not be self-created, in which the non-conforming condition of either the adjacent or nearby properties does not constitute circumstances in which you can justify granting a variance. In support, there is a significant portion that is of the property located in wetland. However, in opposition, the applicant is choosing the size, location of the proposed building and fence, and is essentially creating the need for that variance. The applicant is choosing not to combine those properties, again, eliminating one of those variances. The applicant, in response to this, the horse pasture needs to be in a location where there's good drainage, so when the horse hosts can develop without becoming sick with thrush. So 30 feet off the property line would help the natural flow of water continuing to that wetland. Number 5 on the next page is safety, no safety hazard or nuisance. So we want to make sure we're not increasing in hazardous or endangerment to the general public. In support, the proposed use for a small number of horses, a significant distance from adjacent properties is unlikely to create some nuisances. In opposition, if the owner does not maintain the property or animals, there could be potentially different nuisances or managements that do arise because it is closer than what the required setback is. Number 6 is the relationship of adjacent land uses. So we want to make sure that we're having a harmonious relationship with those who are in the surrounding property. Do we have adequate services to meet this, which we have capacity for? In support, the property is near the extreme south, the very end of the village, and has only one adjacent residential home. In opposition, there does not appear to be similar uses of housing horses, animal boarding, or other small-scale agriculture located in the surrounding area. So with that, that is my analysis. So it's up to you if you would like to take each variance independently, or if you want to group it all together. I think due to the nature of it, you could do either option. Just make sure you include what the request is, and then you guys know the rest.
Sure, I have a question. I have a question for Kate.
Okay.
Were you given a manure plan to go over before you did your survey or research?
I don't believe I was given a very specific manure
Thank you.
management plan.
Thank you.
I have a question. How many lots are there?
So there's
3 or 4?
I believe there's 3. That's what I have identified. There's the
I think she
smaller-
owes 4 total, but that sets on 2 for the horses, correct?
When we talk about A, B, C, and D, that tells me there's 4. I only see 3.
Sure. If you look actually at the land survey, I think that's where it some clarification, not that, that's the wetland. It was, I think they included that in their application.
Yes?
It's in the packet, I believe.
I thought I remember seeing a survey.
Part of it's on the description too here for.
think you
lot of
provided the map sheet,
A, B,
didn't you?
C, and D. It gives you the square footage.
Okay, maybe,
Yeah, on their application, I agree with Joe. There's A, B, C, and D, but I'm not seeing that illustrated on any kind of site plan.
that is complex. Cause I did grab this, so let me compare those parcel numbers. Yep, so I got. Oh, those aren't done by parcels, I guess that would be a question for the applicant to clarify, because we do have that larger map that I can pull over to make sure we're pointing to the right connection of parcels.
There's 4 parcels total. So A is for Dorothy Springs House.
Sarah, if I could have you come to the podium and state your name for the record again, please, I'm sorry.
And be recognized by the chair, please.
Sarah Ross, 415 Lagrange. So, the parcel, so the parcel to the north is Lot A. The house is on Lot B. That goes all the way to the back, goes to wetlands. And then C and D are below that, but the red lines below, they're missing the next one down.
So this would be D?
Yes. It should be. Because it's 4 lots total, it's on my closing picture real quick.
And these,
Okay.
I would like to know about the structure, where exactly it would be placed. Can you show us something?
Yeah. Hold on, this is actually, it'd be between there. Okay. Because this is my services property, we don't own all of this, not Swiss Township. So that's right, the flat parts here and everything's sloped to there, and that's where the wet part is right now.
I didn't hear the answer. Where's the,
This one is included too. I don't know why it's not highlighted, but it'd be right here. The structure, it would be sitting north and south.
That corner of lot C.
Yeah, so it'd be on C and D. It's like right in, it's probably more so on, D than C, but, it's, I mean, I have it surveyed, I have it staked still too. And that just recently got surveyed, about a month and a half ago. So a lot later.
Maybe can someone explain what this dark area is?
That's Arrowhead Lake, so it goes all the way down into Rose Township.
Arrowhead Lake.
Yeah.
And does that drain into the Shiawassee?
Yes. Yes. That used to be a really good bass fishing hole
There's still fish in there.
years ago.
Yeah, and then the shallows is back.
Yeah.
Swoops around here.
And yet, was there a study made about effluent reaching the Shiawassee River?
I wouldn't know if that wasn't required by the village, was it?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Larry?
Larry?
You have a microphone?
I'm sorry. Sorry. Was there a study conducted about effluent reaching the Shiawassee River? I realize it's not in the village, and it's not even in our township, where this would drain in. It was apparently in Rose Township. But, has anyone done a study on that? I mean,
Not that I'm aware of. Was there a study done? Possibly. Was it shared with me? No.
the Shiawassee is already under, never mind.
Yes.
I have a degree in landscape management, so I understand the whole drainage problem. Here's my thing. The slope of your property is always gonna run to the wetlands and into the Shiawassee. You can't even put a field tile in, similar to a weeping tile, to keep the directional. moving that field forward is not gonna change that. The manure is still gonna pile up. 2 horses can produce 40,000 pounds of manure in a year. A horse and a donkey, I'm assuming, is pretty similar. You're gonna get wet. You can't muck a pasture, no matter how big it is. You can muck a barn, but what do you do with all of it? It's gonna get wet. It's going to run towards the wetlands in the Shiawassee. It's gonna bring E. coli to the water system. Horse manure has phosphorus. Phosphorus then creates algae, kills the fish, kills the wildlife. It's not just about you not having horses. I would love for you to have horses. I'm a 3rd-generation horse owner. But we have to be a little bit proactive and taking care of our water. We have the whole Falk Road thing going on even. We don't know what we're doing with that manure, and we don't have a set plan. We're going to contaminate our water. And not just for our community, for everyone on the Shiawassee. Is my whole problem with this thing.
So the plan with the manure is there's actually a farm up in South Line, and they take it for about $2.50 a yard.
Okay, but you can't muck a pasture. And horses, as you may know, are small grazers. They graze in a small area. They were not going to graze your entire pasture. That's why in my family we have different cells where we rotate them through as it gets wet and we move them. They're always, your pasture is going to be 100% water and mud, fall, winter, spring. As from the snow, the rain, there's no way to stop that. You don't even have different cells in your pasture that I could say, okay, there's no dry paddock, which is general for any horse in the winter, to have a spot where higher ground where they're not going to me, sorry, I can't, I'm a no on this one.
Joe,
Yeah.
I have a question. Why are the lots not being combined?
They are. I just registered an application for him. Because originally the Vince Afano, who purchased it, separated them all when he reflipped the house. And then he originally was gonna sell lot A, lot C, and lot D to make the house sell quicker so the price was lower. So then I came in and bought all 4 of them. So now they need to get recombined because he originally split them up because they were all combined when he purchased the property.
So the prior landowners split up the properties into 4 for the sale, 4 lots, and it is your intent then to combine them back to 1. Is that what I'm?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're having an issue right now with Oakland County. I'm guessing because they've been not in the office, where actually C and D is somehow registered under Vince and Carey. So, but I closed on it, so we're waiting on Oakland County to get back to us on what the issue is and why they're getting the tax bill and I'm not getting the tax bill. So I don't think we can move forward until that goes,
Okay.
because it's kind of scattered all over.
Okay.
And so I'm waiting to hear back from the village on that.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
who I talked to.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
And following up on that, if I may, once those parcels are combined, that potentially takes care of at least a couple different components of the variance request, right?
That's a question for Caitlin?
Yeah. Yes, sorry, that's a question for Caitlin.
So that takes care of a concern in which you have an accessory building that doesn't have a principal structure. That would address that concern because they were proposing to put the barn, the stable area on a different parcel. So you have to have a principal purpose of the parcel. So that addresses that concern, but I believe based on the drawing, you still had the 50-foot issue from the property line. I'd have to
Right.
verify looking at that picture again.
In other words, even if they combine all the lots to 1, it's not gonna change the location of the barn.
It's still gonna be considered in the front yard.
Yeah, yeah, so it doesn't change the location of the barn, it's just that now we're all 1 parcel. But it will still be the same location, so nothing's changed on that by combining.
I would like to, I'm Larry McGaw, I would like to ask If there's a ordinance on how many horses can be housed in the village?
Basically one per,
I'm sure everybody in the
acres.
audience has great interest in what you just passed them. Somebody would like to tell us.
So, for anyone who was interested, the Village Code of Ordinances was recently, just in August, amended by council to allow for the keeping of horses within the village under certain conditions, right? So that would be building structures or yard areas used for the keeping of horses must be located not less than 50 feet from the property line. There is no less than 2 acres of continuous property by one property owner zoned R1A and or R1B, which is the property we're talking about, and then a bit about electric fences. So whereas horses were not permitted to be kept in the village before, they are now. That's the long and short of it.
Under 2 acres.
Correct.
But the
My
first
question
thing
was
says,
quantity, right?
the first thing says this section does not apply to horses kept or maintained for hobby or personal purposes and boarded at the owner's property.
That has to do with what comes before in the Code of Ordinances, where it spells out all of the kinds of animals that are not allowed. So what this section, which we added, is saying is that horses are the exception to that rule that came before this.
I see.
All set, Larry?
Yes.
I really feel like this is that number 5, and no fault of Caitlin's, this is a public safety issue. And I would make the motion right now to deny it based on public safety.
Yeah, we can't do that right
But,
now.
but I'm just saying, there's no way that the slope of the yard, there's no way to bring up that yard enough to keep those wetlands protected. She's on the floodplain, almost 70%. I just,
It's a non-starter for you, okay?
If you don't have any more questions for public comment, I would suggest you close public comment and then start deliberation between the board if that's what you so choose to do.
Okay.
If there's no more questions.
Just on that note, are we sure that our applicant doesn't have any more information they would like to share? Just want to be sure that the folks are heard.
Would you like to,
Would you like to say anything further? Okay. Right, then I'll make the motion to close the
I'll make the
public
motion.
hearing. I just
I'd like to
did.
make the motion.
I just did.
Oh,
You may support.
sorry.
Okay? Okay.
Yep.
okay, we got a motion with support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
You made it to deny it, right?
No. We were
No.
actually still in.
No, we're just.
we're out
now
of
we're just
public
moving
hearing.
into-
We're out of public hearing. We had to move out of the public hearing.
Okay.
Now,
Into
Now
general
we have
business.
discussion.
Yeah, just checking.
Sure.
Want to make sure I didn't miss that.
Sure.
It changes every month.
so now we're going to general business, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay.
So, Joe, you asked us, did we want to take these A, B, and C?
I think, well, since we have it on our agenda that way, I would take it A, B, and C.
Yeah,
Let's take them individually. I think that way we can, they're diced up. There's three moves on this, so let's do them one at a time, A, B, and C.
fair enough. So, A is the fence, okay? I think the fence, some of that's obviously this all gets muddled together, but, the fence is part and parcel of, this property being on wetlands and some of it not being suitable, for the applicant's desired purposes. I've got to agree that, public comment earlier talked about this being self-created. And I think that's a big problem with the fence, because it's being put in the front yard, and a lot of this is being self-created. That's my remark on that.
Any other discussion on the fence?
Joe? I agree with her entirely, but the fence is almost a non-issue if we go with the structure first. If it's not gonna be a horse thing, then it doesn't even matter. Cause they wouldn't need that. I agree there does need to be a new fence there. But
Yeah, the fence, I actually don't have a problem with the fence. It's not that far out of height from what we approved a couple weeks ago.
Caitlin, how should we handle
Different
this? We don't wanna get the cart before the horse.
You know, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is though it is, an intertwined discussion, part of it is there are different philosophies behind why you would approve this variance and not this variance. So specifically for the fence, though it is supposed to function for a different purpose, part of it goes back to aesthetically, is this a fence that should be placed there? Is it gonna cause a problem with the open space components of that general area? Is it gonna cause a safety issue being that much taller? And so, variances run with the property. This is not just for this potential use. And not saying the applicant's proposing to do this, but they could sell it in 2 weeks, and then somebody else could come in and say, oh, I can keep that variance, I can put up my fence that's that tall, but I never plan on doing horses. So the thing to remember is though they're coming forth with a explanation on why they need it that's very specific, variances run with the property. And so the next owner all get to keep the benefits of what you're approving. And so that's how I would, though they're somewhat related, again, there are different contextual issues. So the fence I would still keep as separate. It's in the front yard and it's taller than what we allow. Is that appropriate for this area or not?
Any questions? Okay,
Comments?
I don't have any questions, but I would say I tend to agree with Josh and Josephine in that there seems to be a certain value in tearing down a rickety old fence and putting up a shiny new fence, just in and of itself. If you kind of separate that out from the whole issue of keeping horses, I think anything. Yeah.
I was there last night.
Yeah.
It could use replacing.
totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that part of it is,
Isn't
I
the
don't have a problem with.
old cyclone fence already gone?
Yeah, but the chain link is still there though, isn't it?
The side yard has it up, I ripped it out, it's terrible.
The side yard still has a chain link fence. Okay, I missed that. I was there today, I missed that.
North side, correct?
Yes, it's between me and Dorothy Crane, which is 409 McGrath.
And if she would have consulted with me earlier, she would have probably kept the fence up and then just did a repair, because the fence was already within the height that it was requesting the variance for, but now that the fence is gone, we have no way to prove that.
so we can't use the excuse of repairing existing.
Right.
It's
It
gone.
was already gone.
Yep.
So all the fence is gone?
Just
or
the
some
north-
of the fence is gone?
The north end of the fence is still on the property. The west side of the fence and the south side of the fence has been removed from the property.
Which would be the front, that would be next to the road. Front.
Correct. It would
It'd
run
be the front of
parallel.
the lot.
It would run parallel with LeGrand,
Right.
Gotcha.
which was there existing at one time,
Okay,
but now is removed.
okay. Sorry, I think I derailed you.
Any other discussion on the fencing?
I'm gonna, okay, I'll weigh in on the fencing. I think it's awfully high, it's awfully tall. And I don't see, support, in practical difficulties because it was self-created. as well as extraordinary circumstances. I'm not finding either of those meeting the criteria.
That's again, sorry, that's again where I agree. If they're not housing horses, then it really doesn't matter if the height. They can put a different fence up.
That would comply with the ordinance.
Right.
Yes.
Which would be a 4-foot fence in the front yard, 3-foot fence in the
3
front
foot.
yard.
6 inches.
3-foot fence in the
3
front
foot
yard.
ornamental in nature.
Yeah,
Yes.
yep. Okay,
It would be about 33% in excess of our ordinance.
so we're talking about the only thing that could be allowed on that frontage, on the front of the lot, would be a 3-foot ornamental fence.
And by definition, that's self-created because of the horse thing, if we go with that. Yeah.
Does anybody want to make a motion on the fence?
Somebody that has a voice.
Where is it?
It's on the last page.
I can always help you through it.
Or
Yeah.
your analysis.
All right. All right, I make the motion to deny the requested variance located at 415 of the Grand Street. Okay, don't have to say specifically the fence.
Yeah, you would say the fence height. I forgot to put the space fill in the blank, so. So it'd be just the fence
I make
height
them.
variance.
I make the motion to deny the requested fence height variance. Look, of what was it?
You don't have to put a number.
Okay. Located at 415 of the Grand Street based on the following findings of fact. It does not comply with standard 1 based on the fact that the applicant is choosing to conduct the use in addition to the existing residential use and is not proposing to combine the subject. Oh, well, okay, she is.
You would say, something to the notion of, does it meet if you were going off of another member's deliberation, it would be standard for extraordinary circumstances.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay.
And then you would also say substantial justice because the issue is self-created, if that's what you were.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Yep.
All right. I make the motion to deny the request on the fence height variance located at 415 LeGrand Street based on the following findings of fact. It does not comply with standard 4 based on the fact that the applicant is creating the need for the variance by changing the use of the property to include animal boarding or husbandry. And what did you say? Substantial justice. There we go. Substantial. And that's it.
Is that enough?
Yeah, the biggest thing isn't a denial, you have to state why.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there support?
Support.
Got the support? Call for the vote.
Campbell,
No.
Hutchins,
Let me clarify one thing is a
And I don't agree.
yes vote is to deny, and a no vote is not. So yes is to deny on this motion.
Yes, is to agree,
Okay.
Josh.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I'm saying no.
okay, no.
okay.
Hutchins,
Yes.
Delaney,
No.
Murphy,
Yes.
Pachota,
I vote to deny.
McGaw,
Yes.
Rebar.
Yes.
The
Okay.
motion
That
fails.
was, yes, that was a
Motion
yes.
The
passes.
motion passed, yes.
Motion
The
passes.
variance is denied.
Okay,
The fence height is not passed, right?
Correct.
let's move on to B, accessory structure in the front yard. Let's go to a discussion. Caitlin, do we have to have you just walk us through this for the structure?
Do you want me to kind of give you a quick recap of 1, 2, and 1 through 6?
Yes,
What you're
please.
asking for?
Yeah.
No, this accessory building would normally be called a barn or a stable, is that correct?
Either way, it's, yes, they're all in the same group. The biggest component is that it is located in front of the house, which is considered the principal structure, and that is the basis of what's considered a front versus, side or rear yards. And so they do meet the required, so that's the issue, is it's in the front yard. They do need that 30-foot required setback, but they are in the front yard, which we do not allow.
Could you show us on the map what would be considered front yard, side yard, and rear yard?
Anything beyond the front facade of the home is front,
Okay,
front facade.
that's front. So what would then be, what would side yard be then? So there's some
They're-
overlap
so
they're
between
putting
those
theirs
two
like in the-
categories.
Well,
It's gotta stop at the front.
I gotta
Yeah,
start
there
at
you
the
go.
front.
Okay,
There
alright,
you go.
Sorry.
okay.
And then rear
And then
is.
rear would be the, whatever it's the opposite of facade.
They're basically trying to
You
put
know,
it in the
yeah.
side yard,
Okay.
right?
Side and front.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that real quick recap.
Yep, okay, please.
So talking about practical difficulties, that's again going back to, there's unreasonable things that are, causing a problem in which they're not able to do what they would like to do and requesting a variance. So in support, there is a wetland in the significant portion of the rear portion of the property that makes it so then you can't put an accessory building. In opposition, that is where the applicant is proposing to specifically put it, and which is causing the need for that variance. Because they are able to use it for residential purposes, so it's still being able to be used. Two is talking about substantial justice, in which again, you're making sure not only this applicant, but those in the same zoning district are being treated similarly or fairly. So, in support, as far as neighbors from a residential standpoint, there's not as much density specifically located here on the south side of the village. So looking at that potential impact. In opposition, there are no, structures or, general character areas in which having it be in the front, could be directly contradictory to what's going on in that general area. Number 3 is talking about public safety and welfare. Due to the secluded nature of the property, it doesn't appear it would have a significant impact on the public safety or welfare, the location of the building. In opposition, the applicant is choosing to put that specifically there, because of the intended potential purpose. It could potentially cause a nuisance being closer to the front yard, or in the front yard. Number 4 is talking about extraordinary circumstances, so what's specific to the property, either from a logistics standpoint or a condition, and is not self-created. So in support, there's a significant portion of property that is located in wetland. In opposition, the applicant is choosing where to put the proposed building, in which is creating the need for the variance. Number 5 is that there's no safety hazard or nuisance, and we don't want to increase those. So in support, again, due to it just being located in the front yard, not being right on, I'm not asking for a front yard setback variance. It could minimize any potential concern. In opposition, again, due to the proposed use of that accessory, there could be some impacts. That's more related to C though, not so much B. And then 6, talking about the relationship of adjacent land uses, in which you're trying to make sure that cohesively as an overall area, you're trying to be harmonious and make sure that you're having still a functional area and not causing a nuisance. So in support, this is on the extreme south side of the village, in which you're less likely to cause that nuisance, again, due to residential density, which is more typical in our single-family districts. And then in opposition, again, it goes back to this isn't something that's customary in the village, is to have your front yard or your accessory building in the front yard. And that's a big character question if we do approve it.
Any questions, board?
Well, standard 4, based on the fact that the applicant is creating the need for the variance by changing the use of the property, I think that applies. This building does not have anything to do with residential, use. That would be, yes, specification 4, standard 4.
I want to make a remark.
Yeah.
Regarding adjacent land uses. I gotta respectfully disagree with you a little bit on this one, Caitlin. There's a number of homes in this area. There may not be one right next door because the
Wetlands.
the wetland and the Shiawassie's there, but there's a house right across the street, and there's one kitty corner. There's a lot of residential homes in that area that, again, it's just not consistent with adjacent land usages being in that front yard.
Any other comments, board? Hearing none, does anybody want to make a motion on B here? On where the barn's gonna be put, for the variance for the barn or structure.
I screwed the last one up. Your turn.
If I did a fine job.
Yeah, you did great. Okay, I'll make a motion to deny the requested variance, really based on the fact that, I'm sorry,
Do you want some milk?
yes, what I said, standard 4, yeah. It changes the use of the property and, does not, it's in a residential area,
So also number 6, it's not consistent with the adjacent.
not consistent with adjacent properties, that's correct.
And just to clarify, when we said variance, it was for the accessory structure in the front yard.
Yes,
Could you state that for us on the record, Mr. McGough?
I sure would like to.
Help.
Sure. I think what Jeremy was asking is. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, something like that.
All right, thank you. I make a motion to deny the variance on the front yard accessory building, being non-conforming because of standard 4, it's self-created, and the choice of the applicant to allow this use. Standard 6 is not harmonious with the surrounding area. The fact that it is in a residential area should apply, should stay with the recommended setbacks.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion to deny and a support on the floor. Roll call, please.
Delaney,
Yes.
Hutchins,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Pachota,
I vote to deny.
McGaw,
Yes.
Rebar,
Yes.
Okay, we'll go to item C. What is our item C?
So item C is talking about the yard area, so the keeping of the animal is, less than 50 feet from the property line for the keeping of horses. So if that goes into, because of the specific use, we require a 50-foot setback to deter from nuisances and things of that nature. And so that's, really the fundamental backing of that requirement.
Any questions from the board about this C? Everybody understand what we're talking about?
This is the side yard, location. Is that what this is about?
So, Mr. McGaw, the ordinance states that you have to be at least 50 feet from any lot line. And she is requesting to be 30 feet from the lot line, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay? So you, the rule is 50 and they want 30, so that's what it comes down to. You got that, Larry?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for the board? Anybody want to make a motion?
You know, I would like to, this, we're talking about the building, right? No, the fence.
The fence,
Okay,
where the keeping of the animals to take place.
sort of, show us on this picture where. fence-
Mr. McGaw, it's not the fence.
It's,
It is the boarding of animals 50 feet from a property line.
Oh, the boarding of animals.
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
it's the distance of the animals to the property line, Larry.
I see, okay.
Okay. Any other questions or determinations? Would somebody like to make a motion? Or is there any more discussion?
There's no one living, to the, south?
No.
Not within a close proximity.
Mostly lake to the south.
Well, I have to agree with the person that sat there is gone now.
Jim, sure.
Sherilyn. Yeah. And his wife, I think they both mentioned that, drainage from, this fenced-in area is going to go downhill. And downhill means the floodland and, the Shiawassee River. And I think, in the long term, that's gonna be detrimental to the environment for everyone that lives on that river, and in the river.
Larry,
Hmm.
I agree. And that would be part of, Standard 5.
Standard 5.
And it also reflects back to, Roberta's remarks about concerns about, the environment as well.
Another thing that hasn't been brought up yet is that when you have horses, you have flies. I know it's tough to think about this, but horse flies, when they bite, they can break the skin. And no one that owns a horse wants flies. It's just that they do attract them, especially almost any time. What do you, someone else owns a horse? You're a
I
horse
know
owner? You wanna comment
To
on
me,
it?
there's just no way to keep the runoff from creating a public safety issue and a health issue for the community.
Yes,
There's just none.
I agree. Maybe the fly is just a, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be anyone really living near this place, but across the street, like you mentioned, there's 2 or 3 houses there. And, I'm surprised that, they didn't show up. It's crazy.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to deny the request variance for 415 LeGrand based on the finding that it does not comply with Standard 5 due to the risk of public safety, the proximity of the property to the lake lying within a floodplain causes environmental and health concerns due to water waste runoff from horse manure.
May I recommend adding to that, that you wanna include standard 2 as well, making sure that you're treating other property owners in the same zoning district equally?
Well, I thought somebody might say that. Anybody who'd like to look at it, Michigan State does a this is for your copy, Caitlin, and it basically says that you cannot put a horse in a floodplain, you cannot put it in where it's going to infect the waterways.
She wants you to combine
Just
standard
add it.
2 into that, into your motion.
Yeah, it was 2, you want me to make it for 2?
Yeah.
In addition to what you've stated.
Okay.
Cause I'm assuming those are the GAMPS practices for Michigan State.
Well, I still deny 5, but doesn't it also, self-created?
Sure,
Isn't it?
Sure, I recommended adding more than just the one,
Yeah.
that was all.
You know, it only takes one to turn down a
So
request.
you only need to
I have mine somewhere.
specifically state one, but I would recommend that we
Take Joe's.
add.
Could you give her a hand with that, like you did? Could you give her a hand with this, like you did Larry?
Yep, so you would just add an addition, to what you just said, and also.
I'm new at this.
If you wanted to do the one that was talking about, self-created, that one is standard 4, that there are no,
Okay, so I have to go through all 5?
no.
No? Okay.
So you can keep what you already wrote, or wherever you
Okay.
stated, and you would just add to it that, because, and also that it does not meet standard 4 because it was self-created.
You need to
One more time?
You need to articulate that.
So Roberta has hard hearing.
Yeah,
Oh.
she has some hearing issues.
Okay.
I have to use your wording, is that what you're saying? No?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's in addition to mine?
Yep.
Okay. One more time, then. I make the motion to deny the request for variance 415 LeGrand Street based on the following findings. It does not comply with standard 5 based on the fact of the risk of public safety, the proximity of the property of the lake lying within a floodplain causing environmental health and water. It also does not meet standard 4 because it's self-created. Come in 1 second.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Mr. Murphy?
Okay. There's a motion on the floor for denial.
deny.
There's a second. Roll call vote, please.
McGaw,
Yes,
Hutchins,
Yes?
Delaney,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Pachota,
Vote.
Say yes.
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rebar.
Yes.
Mine
Okay, motion carries.
Okay.
Still your, Caitlin, still for you, in case this ever comes up again.
Sure, I think, yeah.
I
I'm aware.
always go with state findings.
Yep.
Okay, we're out of general business. And we'll move on to the next item, which is board member comments. Any comments, Mr. McGaw?
no.
moving around.
No comments.
I just want to thank everybody for their attention to being recognized by the chair. It's important. It's important because meetings can get heated. And if we don't get recognized by the chair, then that sets the tone for the public to also just chime in as they wish.
Yep.
Okay?
Okay, that's called keeping focused. Do you have any comments?
No, good.
No, I do not.
Thanks.
Any comments? I have none either. I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 8:05.